Good morning, class. Today is our third day of summer school. We've slowly but surely gotten the bugs out of the technology, and with my fingers crossed, those of you who have been having problems with the technology should be able to go to room, sorry, my marker was not ready, 303 North, and you talk with Miss Pettis. Some of you have taken advantage of this. That's not a problem. This class has new computers. For those of you who've been working with this, as you know, we've had problems with our internet blocking software. But every morning I'm going to tell our department to go ahead and unblock the site that we need. And from that site you'll be able to post. Right now, Quick Topic is completely unblocked. And our YouTube videos get unblocked each morning. So, with both of these things, you should be able to complete your assignment. Now, some of you have still not turned in your assignments. My plan is today through Selly, I'll send each of you a private text with your grade. Furthermore, I'm going to give you a plan. Let me explain what I mean by a plan. When I do work, I said this yesterday, my work is for you to learn. And more importantly, the work I have is a progress towards a goal. So every day you're going to do work, so that you have a goal. Our goal is what I want you to learn. If you don't do your work, what that means is this wonderful little line towards learning suddenly has a gap in it. And then you have to literally, almost quite literally, jump over the gap without the work. I am trying to strike a balance between you because I need you to do the work, yet at the same time, I want you to learn a little bit of responsibility. And I will continuously balance that in this particular class. And I apologize. With the technology issues, which took me about 3 hours to fix yesterday, I have not graded your work. But today you'll get grades, and today we'll begin moving forward. Again, if you don't know how to do this, this is how you access our assignment if, and I stress the word if, you cannot get my emails. Unfortunately, your emails will be blocked. I can get our Quick Topic, I can get our YouTube, but our email, I won't be able to unblock it at the school. That's going to be one weakness. But the good news is I can still communicate with you through Selly. So, to get to your assignment, which is about to be posted, you go to the internet. Let's close that. Let's go to the internet. You go to kingsvilleisd.com. There it is. You go to schools. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit coughed this morning. Go to staff directory, select tips, because that's who funds me. You find me, Hill John Roger. You find the English 4 Summer School. And I hope you're not fast forwarding through this because there is going to be something new here. In a moment, you will discover that we're going to have the June 13th assignment posted. Up here, of course, I have all your links. So if you look right here, and you click right here, open in a new tab, there is yesterday's assignment and my voice. If you scroll down here, you'll notice I have your Quick Topics. This is the way you're going to set up everything. Notice something else about the Quick Topics as we work along. Yesterday's assignments were assignments 3 and 4 on Quick Topic. As we go through the year, I'm going to keep on calling assignments numbers. Now, an assignment might have a part 1 and a part 2, but for instance, today, if I give 2 assignments, it will be assignment 5 and assignment 6 on Quick Topic. Remember, those assignment numbers are my quick topic assignments. Other assignments, as some of you well know, you've just taken pictures and sent to me. Those work as well. But I went off topic. Here's something I need to show you. See this useful links? Click there, and you will need to get here today. I stress this to you. There are two pieces of literature we're going to be working with today. The complete Aesop's Fables are right here, and the Pardoner's Tale Modern Translation. You'll need to come to this location to download these files. You may read the files on your cell phone, your computer. You can even print them out. However you want to do it, this is the literature, and as we work with literature, I will always post it here. Furthermore, I'm not going to take the literature down. You're not going to read the complete Aesop's Fables. But as we go through the summer, I might ask you to pull something from the fables as we work our way through it. So that's where our literature will be. Let me flip back over here now. So today, as far as the class goes, you will need to download literature. You're going to, of course, do today's assignments. You're going to receive a grade. And if your grade is less than what I feel is an acceptable grade, we're going to come up with a plan of action. This is both reactive, because you might be missing grades, and it's going to be proactive, because we want you no longer to miss grades. Both of these things are true. So let's go and get started on today's assignment. First things first. As you know, our first 2 days of the course, we've been concentrating on writing. The Texas expectation of knowledge and skills I want you to learn is to write an engaging story. One of the most important things that I personally believe, and it's a strong belief that I have about this, is that this idea that writing and reading are separate skills is false. I believe that there is very, very, very little difference between writing, which I totally misspelled. Let's try this again. Between writing, thinking, and reading. I don't see any difference between them. So far, in my class, this is what you've done. You've done some writing. You've been writing on the quick topic. Believe it or not, you've been doing thinking. Well, how do I know you've thought? Those little bubble maps and whatnot I make you do are called thinking maps. They're a tangible representation of your thought process. In order for me to make you a better student and to learn, I have to teach you how to think. And that's how I teach you how to think. We are missing something, though. We really haven't done much reading. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back from the story you've been working on. What you've been preparing for your story, I'm going to extract off of Quick Topic, and I'm going to send to you tomorrow, because your homework weekend assignment will be to write the first draft of your engaging story. But I need time to analyze your writing, to give you some ideas. I'm going to ask you the questions. You will not write this story without assistance. That's my job. I will teach you how to do it. But again, I told you, reading, writing, and thinking are actually one process. So today we're going to work with engaging stories. The story I'm having you write is an allegory. An allegory is a work of fiction, but it is so closely resembling something real in terms of descriptions, it allows you to talk about something else. My story of the crayon that I posted onto the discussion board is really a story about me. Of course, if anybody accuses me, I can say, no, it's a story about a crayon. The Wizard of Oz is actually a story about the gold and silver standard. The stories you're writing are actually stories about you. And you're going to continue your allegory. So the literature we're going to read are, in fact, allegories. In order to teach that, here's your expectations you will be working on. I always want you to know your expectations. Here's our first expectation. Figure 19. This grades your ability to, there's my highlighter, read and comprehend. Reading and comprehension are two different skills. My daughter, I love my daughter. She's about to be an 8th grader. She had a reading assignment, and she sat there in front of me for 1 hour reading. She read. Then I asked her questions over her reading. She couldn't answer a one. The act of sitting there reading the words does nothing unless you comprehend what you're reading. When I took Spanish in high school, by the way, I don't speak a word of Spanish. I'm really kind of awful about it, and some of you have allowed me to call you by your nicknames, which has been great because I can't pronounce your names. I could read Spanish. When I was practiced, I could read Spanish effectively. I didn't understand a word I was saying. That's the difference. It's my job that you both can read and understand. So let's look at the words. Students use a flexible range of metacognitive reading skills. Hold on, I didn't uncover it quite enough. There. Students use a range of metacognitive reading skills in both assigned and independent reading to understand the author's message. So, flexibility means there are different ways to approach it. It can be used with different types of literature. Metacognition. You think about the way you think. That's a skill that's tricky to learn that I'm going to try to get you to pick up as the year continues along. From both assigned and independent. We're going to do both of that today. Assigned means I tell you what to read. Independent means you have choice to understand an author's message. That falls back to comprehension. An author has a meaning beneath the words. You know this because you've been writing stories in my class. We're going to ignore this part except for the self-directed critical readers. That's the goal. Our goal is that when you graduate with that diploma in my hand, you not only can read, you can analyze and talk with people about literature. Now, there are two expectations other than this. You need to reflect on understanding and monitor comprehension. My daughter cannot monitor comprehension. She's really, 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 really bad at it. That's why, unfortunately, she can read just fine, but she cannot comprehend. So we need to make sure that you learn how to monitor that you're reading. That's that part when you're reading along and suddenly you realize you've read 2 pages and you're like, oh no, I don't remember anything I read. Good readers realize they've done it and go back. Poor readers just keep on going. And how do you do this? How do you monitor comprehension? They tell us how we need to do it. You need to ask questions. Notice the word is not answer questions. It is to ask questions. It is to summarize. That takes something larger, make it short. It is to synthesize. You need to make new things from the literature, and you need to make connections. You've got to be able to relate this story to what you've learned in real life. And you need to create a sensory image. A sensory image is in your own mind. You don't just see words, you see what's literally happening in the story. If they talk about food, you can smell the food. Also, what you need to do is make the complex inferences. This is the hard part. By the way, inductive means that I give you all the pieces and you assemble the big. That's inductive. You take all the small and you make the big. Deductive means you take the big and you chop it up and make it into small. About the text and use textual evidence. This is the one that's difficult for students to understand because I hate to tell you guys this, but you've been taught incorrectly. In a teacher's edition, I don't know if you've ever seen a teacher's edition, wonderful little tools. In the teacher's edition, they have these wonderful, wonderful questions. And in the answer key, it says answers may vary. That's the worst thing in the world because many people interpreted this as I cannot be wrong. That is wrong. Answers may vary meant that there were many different answers from which to choose from. And there isn't a right or wrong, but again, I'm trying to get you to understand there's a range of answers. And in that range of answers, the way you determine which answer is the best is based on the text evidence. So while there may be no wrong answer, there are, in fact, better answers. And we will continue to work on that as we go through the year. So that's one of the things we're going to work on today. Let's cover it up. And let's erase this. Okay. Our next item that we're going to learn about is right here. We need to learn about the comprehension of literary texts for theme and genre. Literary fiction. Students analyze, make inferences, and draw conclusions about theme and genre in different cultural, historical, and contemporary contexts and provide evidence from the text to support their understanding. So, in a moment, I'm going to go over the history of the two pieces of literature we're working on because you need to know it from this historical perspective. I'm going to give you that sometimes. Sometimes you'll give it to me. And what are we going to look at? We're going to compare and contrast. What compare and contrast means, you know what compare and contrast means offhand, but the most important part about compare and contrast is you have to read at least two works of literature. If you can't read two works of literature, that means that you cannot compare and contrast. And they have to express a universal theme. That's a fancy word. Universal theme is truth. They have to represent truth. What makes it universal is that nobody will disagree with you. The best place to see these, believe it or not, fortune cookies. Fortune cookies are the world's best location for these universal themes. You open them up and most people read them and they laugh about them and they don't say, no, it's wrong. They laugh because they know it's true. That's what a universal theme is. So as we work along, you're going to look at things that could have gone in fortune cookies. And we need to look at characters, setting, and theme, and relate it to that historical, social, and economic. Today I'm going to give that to you, and other pieces of literature we work with this summer, you're going to give it to me. So that's the next thing we're working with. Cover that. There we go. And our last piece sits at the bottom. And let me erase my notes quick. I love having an eraser on my chalkboard. Our last piece. Students understand, make inferences, and draw conclusions. You've heard this before in all three of the TEKs about the structure and elements of fiction. Structure means how it's written. Sometimes we're so enthralled with the story that we forget to look at how it's written. As critical readers, we have to look at how it's constructed and provide evidence, there's that word again, to support their understanding. We're never going to leave evidence behind, and that's something you're going to work on in today's assignments. We need to analyze how complex plot structure and devices advance the action. Remember in our writing assignment TEK that I went over a couple days ago, we talked about suspense, conflict, climax. Remember I drew the little roller coaster that went like this? That's what I'm talking about. We put this together. Notice that in our writing, we're working on this, and there it is sitting in our reading teaks. So what we're literally doing is we're now taking someone who's already done the very thing I'm having you do in my class, and you're doing it in my reading. So what device are we looking at? Foreshadowing. Foreshadowing, the author gives hints to a future action. You know what foreshadowing is. You sit there in the movie theater and you go, ah, I know what's happening. I know what's coming. I know what to predict. That's what foreshadowing is. So we're going to be looking for foreshadowing. And I expect you to be able to see it in your own right. Sorry about that. I had to go answer the telephone. All right, where was I at? Okay, we were talking about foreshadowing. The next thing we're going to look at is a flashback. A flashback is when an author writes about an event outside the normal time flow of a story. And by the way, it has to be in the past. Notice how both of these interrelate with one another. A foreshadow is your future. A flashback is the past. They're actually very, very, very similar. Suspense, I talked about earlier with your writing. So notice how, again, your writing comes into your reading. The next thing we're going to look at, you have to analyze moral dilemmas. A moral dilemma is when a character is asked to place something, to take a decision that might not have a single right consequence. It's based upon morality. And that's part of an engaging story. Quandaries. Those are the problems that we faced. A problem is very, 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 very similar to your conflict, presented in works of fiction as revealed by the underlying motivations and behaviors of the character. Remember the underlying motivations and behavior? What those are? Remember when I had you do the circle map, and then I had you do the bubble map? Understand, the bubble map is what we see. The circle map is left hidden. An underlying motivation means you take what you figure out in your bubble map and you attempt to figure out what's in the circle map. That's how you find out underlying meaning. And the last one, and the one that causes the most trouble, is we need to know some British authors. And we're going to work with a British author today in just a moment. Remember, this is not a British literature course, but in order to establish this particular expectation, some English teachers find it easy to teach only British literature. Today you're going to learn about two different types. So this is what we're working with today in terms of expectations. So let's go ahead and begin with our literature. Our first piece of literature, as I look at this, there it is Aesop's Fables. In the website where you're going to download your literature from, I've given you the complete Aesop's Fables. It is a collection of fables credited to Aesop, a slave and storyteller believed to live in ancient Greece between 620 and 560 BCE. BCE is before Christian era. So before Christ. So you're talking a very ancient tale. And Apollonius of Tyana, a first century CE philosopher. CE is Christian era, wrote this about Aesop. Like those who dine well off the plainest dishes, he made use of the humblest incidents to teach great truths. And after serving up a story, he adds to it the advice to do a thing or not to do it. Then, too, he was really more attached to truth than the poets are. For the latter do violence to their own stories in order to make them probable. But he, by announcing a story which everyone knows to be true, told truth by the very fact he did not claim to be relating real events. Remember how in our expectation we had to talk about universal truth. Universal truth is also called a theme. When I pick pieces of literature to teach to you, and I do not pick them randomly or because the book has them. I pick them because they relate to the expectation. So we are going to read a very ancient piece of literature. These are very, very, very small collections of stories. They are not long at all. Let me pick one really quick. If you'll just wait. Let's pick this one right here. The Man and the Serpent. This is one of the stories. Notice they're very short. Notice also the writing I've been having you doing for my class for your engaging story has also been very short. A countryman's son by accident trod upon a serpent's tail, which turned and bit him, so that he died. The father, in a rage, got his axe, and pursuing the serpent, cut off part of its tail. So the serpent, in revenge, began stinging several of the farmer's cattle and caused him severe loss. Well, the farmer thought it best to make up with the serpent and brought food and honey to the mouth of its lair and said to it, "Let's forget and forgive. Perhaps you were right to punish my son and take vengeance on my cattle. But surely I was right in trying to take revenge him. Now we are both satisfied. Why should we not be friends again?" "No, no," said the serpent. "Take away your gifts. You can never forget the death of your son, nor I the loss of my tail. Injuries may be forgiven, but not forgotten." That's a universal truth. The story is a very simple story. It's the story of a farmer and a serpent. Remember when I had you write your allegories? Remember, mine, it's just a story about a crayon. But it's not, is it? The story of the sidewalk. It's just a story of a sidewalk. But it's not, isn't it? The animal story that one of you told. It's just a story about an animal. But it's not, is it? This is a universal truth. It comes from the story. And Aesop's awesome, because Aesop's just going to tell you, here's the story, here's the universal truth. Injuries may be forgiven, but not forgotten. Fortune cookie. We're going to read some of those stories. So that's the first story we're going to work on. When I send you your assignment today on both the website and by email, you'll understand how we're going to use this. You're not going to read the complete Aesop's Fables, so don't worry about it being 60, 70 pages long. You're going to read a few of the stories. That's all you're going to do there. Our next one is going to be called the Canterbury Tales. Now, before I go ahead and read the Canterbury Tales to you, let me give you the history. In literature, English literature, there are what are called literary periods. The first was called Anglo-Saxon, or Old English. This was the period from about 400 CE to about 1080 CE. What ended up happening during this particular period, if you can imagine, I'm going to do it very, very, very poorly. This is Europe. There's the boot from Italy. This is Europe. Over here are the two islands of Great Britain, or England. Now, Great Britain and England used to be housed by the Romans. The Romans brought Latin. That's why you have some Latin in the English language. Well, what happened during this first period, which is called the Old English period, Norway and Sweden had a particular group of Anglo and Saxons who would eventually become known as Vikings. And what they did was they invade Great Britain. And they also invade down over here. They are just invaders. They enjoy it. Well, when they invade, they bring German to our language. And during this period, every piece of literature is written in this kind of weird German tongue. That's the first literary period. By the way, all the pieces of literature, almost every single one of them, is gone. They housed all this fragile ancient paper in a library, and this one little library. Okay? That's where they housed it. Everything in this library. And unfortunately, the library burned to the ground. And when it burned to the ground, almost all was gone. All that was left were a few poems and the epic known as Beowulf. That's why Beowulf is in every literature book from this time, for this time period. We're not going to read anything from this literary period. I just need you to know it. And the reason why I need you to know it is because I'm supposed to teach it. You saw it in the TEAC, familiarity with British works from this literary time period. The time period we're now concerning ourselves with is called Middle English. Middle English is from 1066 up until, let's call it 1500 or so. And the reason why 1500 is so important? Think about the time period. Who sailed the ocean blue in the year of 1492? It was Columbus. Columbus, when he discovers the New World, changes thought, and you begin what's called the Renaissance. Well, we're not going to worry about the Renaissance right at this particular moment. Instead, we're going to worry entirely about this literary period. By the way, Middle English, you have some words that sound like it. Sound like our normal language, but it's still got a lot of German and weird stuff in it. On this side is the actual English text, and let me read it very badly to you and see if you understand it. When that April with his short sword the draught of March hath pierced the rout, and bait every vine in sweet liquor, of which virtue engendered in the flower. When Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath inspired hath in every hot and heat the tender crops, and the young sun hath in rams his half course run, and small fowls make melody that sleep all the night with open ye. So pricketh him nature in here courages, then longing folk to go on pilgrimages, and almost forsaken strange and stroads, to fern highways, country and sundry loods. And specially from every shire's end of England to Canterbury they wend, the holy blissful matter to seek, that ham hath holpen what they were sick. Lost my spot. That hem had... Never mind, I had finished it. That's Middle English. Almost impossible to understand. By the way, this is what it really said. People want to go on religious pilgrimages to spiritual places in the springtime, when April rains have soaked deep into the dry ground to water the flowers' roots, and when Zephyrus, the god of the west wind, has helped new flowers to grow everywhere, and when you see the constellation Aries in the sky, and when the birds sing all the time. Some people go to other countries, but many people in England choose to go visit the city of Canterbury in southeastern England to visit the remains of Thomas Becket, the Christian martyr who had the power of healing people. Easier, huh? During this time, This is the story. Remember I told you, allegory. It is fiction. But it's fiction that tells truth. Here's the story. Geoffrey Chaucer wrote a collection of tales. These are many tales, and you're going to read one of these tales now. They were called the Canterbury Tales. Here's the story. Geoffrey Chaucer literally wrote himself in the story. He is a character in the story. And this group of people, who we're going to talk about as pilgrims, call them what they are, these pilgrims want to go from go on a journey to a shrine. The shrine is St. Thomas Becket. All right, here they are, by the way. As the story begins, they're about to go on this journey, all of these people. They don't know each other. They are complete strangers. But the reason why you ride together is because together you have strength. Together, the bandits will not attack you. Well, one of the people here says, I have a great idea. Since we're traveling together, let's have a competition. Well, the competition is simple. Who tells the best story? Which one of us can say what is the best story? So as we go along, each of the people takes turn telling the stories. Today we're going to read one of those stories. What makes it unique, though, is the characters have no names. Not a one of them has a name except for Geoffrey Chaucer. Instead, you will have the knight. You will have the squire. You will have the miller. You will have the wife. You will have the priest. You have all these people. Every one of them is a group of people that lived during this time period. So when you read these works of fiction, you find out about the time period. You find it out because it is an allegory, just like the one you're writing for me. So they go on this, and they're going to have this wonderful storytelling competition. You're going to read one of these stories today. So let's go ahead and give you the background on the story you're going to read. You're going to read the story of the pardoner. Let's look at the language of it. To pardon means to forgive. You need a piece of history now. It's vitally, vitally important. During this time period, the single most important part of any part of life is the church. The church determines who's going to be king. The church determines how money is going to flow. The church determines everything. And it is one church. It is the Christian church. And during the Renaissance, the Christian church will become Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, and all the other churches. But at this time, it is one church. That's why it is called the Christian church. So, it's the single most important thing. And I want you to understand that life is hard. The average person lives to be 50. That's considered old age. If you make it to 50, you're an old man. The reason why? Disease, starvation, there's no internal plumbing. This is also called the Dark Ages. The reason why it's called the Dark Ages is society during the Roman time had reached a high point. This society is actually less than what was years ago. Think about it like this. We walk around with computers, iPhones, cell phones. What if 100 years from now, people had no things, didn't have those things? They no longer had televisions. They no longer had automobiles. We go back to the way it was during the Old West, riding horses. That's what's happened here in a very real sense. The Dark Ages was a tough time to live. And here's what came into with the church. And by the way, I'm not teaching religion, but you need to understand this. And I stress this to you, I'm not teaching religion. The church offered heaven. If you're a good person, you go to heaven. Heaven is awesome. And right now, your life stinks. So if you see your life is stinking and there's this awesome place, you're going to do everything you can to get there. Well, the way you get there is pretty simple. You live a good life. However, the church, let's say you mess up. People make mistakes. We're all human. The church offers forgiveness. You mess up, you can get forgiven, you can still go to heaven. Here's the major thing you have to understand. If everyone thinks life stinks and everyone wants to go to heaven, and everyone knows this church has forgiveness, what this means is forgiveness becomes a commodity. A commodity can be bought. A commodity can be sold. And during this time, a partner sold forgiveness. That's how it worked during the Middle Ages. So here is our partner selling forgiveness. Take a second as I erase all this stuff. Look at carefully the picture of the partner. Especially in this picture. Notice the shape of the partner. Doesn't he look kind of female? The partner is not masculine. He really is kind of effeminate. And he dresses nice. And he takes care of his hair. He has flowing locks. You see it in both pictures. But what's funny about him is, despite the fact he takes care of himself like this, he does not do a good job of it. And the most important thing about him is he's a complete jerk. And he makes sure everyone in this party, they're going to Canterbury, they're about to tell their tales, he makes sure that they understand that they're dealing with a jerk, because he's proud of it. He is proud that he's a jerk. And let me tell you why. He tells them, yeah, I'm a jerk, but I still am a partner. Which means, even though I'm a jerk, I can tell you what you need to do to be good. So this story, much like Aesop's fables, will tell a moral tale. So, when I'm done listening to this, I want you to read both. A part of the Aesop's fables, you're going to read the partner's tale. Look in the email I'm about to send you. It'll explain the assignments more in detail. The writing, I'm going to revisit today with you because I need to talk with every single one of you about your grades. Because I'm thinking that engaging story, that engaging allegory, samples of the very thing we're reading today, I'm probably going to assign to you over the weekend. So, I wish you good luck. Keep an eye out on the website. I will be sending the actual assignment a little bit later. Talk to you soon.